The Chargers now have one of the more fascinating coordinator duos in the entire NFL, and their success could end up defining the Jim Harbaugh era in Los Angeles.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, the Chargers have new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator, and the pressure is on. They have to show up and they have to perform right away because this Chargers football team has real aspirations. And we also got to talk about what it's going to take for the Chargers to get over that hump and get to the Super Bowl. What are the things that they have to do in honor of Super Bowl week? And of course, we wrap this thing up with the salary cap going way up, way more money for the Chargers to improve this football team.
And I think the important thing for them will be being a little bit more aggressive. They've been pretty conservative this first couple of years. It feels like now's the time to push some of those chips into the middle of the table. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. David, late in the week last week, we found out that Chris O'Leary was going to take over as the Chargers defensive coordinator, and there's a lot of excitement. I think that comes along with that and some risk as well. But you pair that with Mike McDaniel, and all of a sudden you have one of the more interesting combinations in the league. Both guys in the first year in that role with this team, which obviously comes with its own kind of growing pains, of course. At the same time, they're in a unique situation because they are on a team that's won back-to-back, 11-game seasons, and then also hasn't had the success in the playoffs, but is expected to get to the playoffs every year now under Jim Harbaugh. And I think when you look at these guys, it is exciting, and there's like, okay, there's all these kind of possibilities, but also the pressure is kind of ratcheted up because both of these guys, no matter how much experience either one of them has, are going to be expected to get it going and not really have the time to kind of work their way into it.
Yeah, this isn't a rebuild. This is not a rebuild. This is a team that's ready-made to compete right now. Year in, year out, it's an expectation now. And so when they step into these roles, more so I think for Chris O'Leary, I think Mike McDaniel knows what it is. I mean, he's a former head coach. He understands what it is. And also, he's trying to become a head coach again. So he knows that he has to make the most of this opportunity if he wants to take this and trampoline himself back into being the head man of a franchise. This is the ready-made perfect opportunity for him to do that. For Chris O'Leary, this is for him to establish himself in the NFL. I think, we know him as a safeties coach. He's done some tremendous work with the safeties, and a lot of his players speak very, very highly of him and what he was able to do to directly impact their game. Even veterans like Tony Jefferson, who's been in the league for over 10 years, speaking very glowingly about that. But speaking about him is one thing. What he is able to do as a coordinator in the NFL, calling plays at this level for the first time, is a whole different story. The good thing for him is he has playmakers up and down that defense to hopefully be able to hit the ground running.
Yeah, I mean, and you have kind of the scheme set in place, right? You have the foundation there. You have guys who should be knowing pretty close to what you're going to be doing. That is what he has going for him. And I think, as far as the playmakers go, obviously getting Tahir Tart back is huge, but also, you don't have Odafe Oweh. You don't have Khalil Mack right now, right? You do have some marquee free agents that could really change the complexion of what this defense looks like and at least the star power that's available to them, right?
Yeah.
Because pass rush is important no matter what defense you're running. But I would say that, yeah, he has to get the ground running, and it's harder to kind of expect that from him. At the same time, by making this hire, you were saying potentially this is the defensive coordinator we're going to have during the one season potentially that we have Mike McDaniel, right? So like in some ways you could be in a 1-year window, and I think that for them to hire Chris O'Leary obviously says a lot about what they think he brings to the table. And I think one thing that's pretty clear, having seeing some of what the Chargers have put out and in hearing what some of his players have said about him at the collegiate level and at the NFL level, is he does seem like a player's coach, but I think the other part of it is he does seem pretty demanding. He's not afraid to challenge players to get the most out of them. And there's a good clip the Chargers have put out about him kind of having Derwin James off to the side and being, like, hey, like, lead them. You are strong. We know that. And you lead by example. Go command, more from your other teammates and hold them accountable. And having a guy that's not afraid to do those things, I think gets you off on a really good foot. And I think the other thing he has going for him is the fact that there's no real tape on him. Like, you can go watch tape of him at Western Michigan, but it's hard to imagine it's going to look identical to that and what they had to deal with in that conference of, smaller collegiate Division I football. Like, it's going to look different. It should look kind of what like Jesse Minter did, but also he's the guy that has to replace Jesse Minter, right? And that is the other thing that comes along with that. But I do think he has to hit the ground running, and there's really no excuse for it. And then, on the offensive side, you have more reason to believe that Mike McDaniel will do it quickly. Did it quickly with the Dolphins. Great season, as offensive coordinator for the 49ers. A younger coach at 42, but also still kind of on the cutting edge of innovation and creativity. And also the Chargers kind of leaping into the modern NFL offenses, right? Like, you look around the league, this offense should look a lot more like the good offenses in the NFL right now, because you look at all the kind of Shanahan disciples, right? The McVay disciples, Shanahan, McVay, Liam Cohen, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur. Like, there's so many of them that you're kind of getting yourself up to par with those offenses around the league. And the other part of it is that you look last season, 4 of the top 10 scoring offenses came from the Shanahan tree. So it's a proven commodity, right? And, some of the other ones weren't in it.
I think not.
It wasn't like, one of them that's not in it is like Kevin O'Connell, because he had J.J. McCarthy for part of the season at quarterback. Like, they've been good. All of those guys have proven track records of success. And, like, the thing is about going with these two guys is you have two guys in their first year with the team, and there is no warming up process, because this is kind of a defining year for Jim Harbaugh potentially. Because at this point, David, in Jim Harbaugh's first NFL stint, they were coming off of back-to-back NFC championship games and were coming off of a loss in the Super Bowl. So, like, they already had the postseason success that he could kind of rely on and fall back on. They don't have that. And so Jim Harbaugh goes into year 3 where legitimate postseason success is expected. Deep playoff runs are expected. And these are the two guys he's kind of handpicking for this team to get over the hump.
Yeah, 100%. The pressure on Jim Harbaugh is going to start mounting for sure. I think the first couple of years, we knew what he had to do. He had to change the culture completely. He had to basically teach this organization how to win and how to win consistently. He's done that. He's accomplished that. I think that, to me, is very clear. This is a team that has an expectation to win each and every single week, and they have that belief that's been instilled in them by their head coach. But now it's time for the playoff success. We've got there. You've got there the last couple of years back to back, but haven't been able to get over the hump. And the pressure is on. You have a quarterback that's in the middle of a massive contract. You have some key players on both sides of the ball that are locked into place. I think this window right here with new coaches on both sides of the ball, it all means that it's time to win right now.
And I think the part that is scary about it is, okay, like, let's say you have a good offense, right? You're a top 10, top 5 offense this year, and you still don't get the playoff success, right? And so you still kind of feel like you're stuck in neutral and aren't necessarily heading to the great heights you expected from a Jim Harbaugh-led team and what his track record has shown that he can do. And also, you might be losing the one guy on offense, right, that, could keep things kind of at that level, and maybe things don't go well for Chris O'Leary in year 1. Like, these are all possibilities, and it is something that, they have to kind of get right now, because for Jim Harbaugh, like, if the arrow isn't pointing in the right direction, not to say that he's on the hot seat or anything of that nature, but, like, you expect more from a Jim Harbaugh team. Going into year 3, that's what I've always said, right? 2026 is when I expect them to have the foundation to be competing for Super Bowls every season. This year, it has to kind of come to fruition to a certain extent. Like, the model has to show that they can win in the playoffs. Yeah. I think the good thing is, like, obviously you look at the Super Bowl right now, right? Seahawks fired their offensive coordinator last year, brought in Clint Kubiak this year, and then they ended up going to and being one of the best offenses in the league, and now they're in the Super Bowl. On the other side of things, the Patriots have a first head coach in his first year with the team, Josh McDaniels in his first year back with the team, a defensive coordinator that had to miss most of the season fighting cancer, and look where they're at, right? So, like, it can be done. 11 wins tied for Herbert's career high in back-to-back seasons is good. Like, first back-to-back playoffs in 15-plus years is great. It feels shallow without the postseason success, and in year 3, postseason success, a playoff win feels like the bare minimum for what this team needs under Jim Harbaugh. But there are several things that have to go right for them if this time next year we're talking about the Chargers getting ready to play in the big game. So we're going to get into what it's going to take and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And this week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May just needs 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. Add another player to your lineup. If the picks hit, you can cash in. It's that simple. They're basically giving you one. Prize Picks is super simple to use. It takes no time to get started, and the whole format is clean. Pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and that's it. And like we talked about, they're basically giving you one with Drake May. You can go with Drake May more than 1 passing yard and pair that with Sam Darnold to throw for more than or less than 229.5 passing yards. You get on those. It's that easy. And the social feeds feature, it's awesome. You can share lineups and even copy lineups from winners with 1 click. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, my focus, my mood all level up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals, probably working multiple jobs, especially if you live in California. It can be easy to let hydration kind of fall on the back burner. And sometimes by the time you remember, just plain old water isn't enough, and that's where DripDrop comes in. A doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work better. Think clearer focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh skin glow. I love that it uses a precise ratio of electrolytes and glucose for rapid absorption, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drinks. And the best part is, it tastes amazing. If it didn't taste good, I just wouldn't be able to drink it. So getting that taste and also getting hydrated is great. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to DripDrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at DripDrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. David, we talked about the lofty expectations that are going to be on this team, first-year coordinators or not, but I think the big thing for this team is what they actually have to do from a roster standpoint, what they have to do as a team to actually be a playoff and Super Bowl contender next year, because that's what it's all about, right? Like, we want to be here doing this show next season talking about the Chargers playing for the Super Bowl. And, like, I don't think it's out of the question, right? But I do think there are several things that are kind of non-negotiables as far as things that have to get done this offseason if they want to give themselves a chance. Where would you start with that list?
I think we all know where it has to start, and it's the same problem that has been a continuous issue the last several years, and it is improving the interior of the offensive line. It has to be. It's of paramount importance, and they can't shrug it off anymore. They can't just go with a their everyday type player if their everyday type player doesn't have the talent to match up what is required to protect your $260 million quarterback. He just can't get hit as much as he was getting hit this past year if you want to see this team in the Super Bowl. So improving the protection in front of him at the first level and the second level is the most important thing that the Chargers have to get accomplished this offseason.
Yeah, and the thing is last offseason you went into it feeling a similar way, and the answer was re-signing Bradley Bozeman and bringing in Mekhi Becton and, Andre James, who didn't even really get a real shot to be the starting center because they were too busy trying to see if Zion Johnson could be it. So, it was simply, inexcusable. And right now, the only, interior offensive linemen on your roster right now are Mekhi Becton, Bradley Bozeman, Ben Cleveland, and Branson Taylor. Good chance
probably
LA
don't want
moves
any
on
of those guys
from Becton and Bozeman to save over $15 million, which means probably 3 new guys inside unless you can re-sign Zion Johnson, who was clearly the best of those 3. And Butch Barry is an offensive line coach that has overachieved with lesser groups. At the same time, out of 165 offensive linemen with 500 snaps last year, Los Angeles had 3 of the bottom 4 graded players offensively on Pro Football Focus. 3 out of 4 out of 165
It's
were
bad.
all Chargers players. They had 6 players in the bottom 20. So 145th ranked or worse guys they had on their roster that played 500 snaps that ranked in the bottom 20 out of 165. Like it's
atrocious.
inexcusable. You didn't clearly do enough, and it has to be of the utmost importance in the draft and in free agency, whatever you have to do. But I also don't think the Chargers can make a Super Bowl run unless they crush another draft class, because a big reason why the Chargers have gone to the playoffs in back-to-back years and gotten those 11 wins is because of what they've been able to do in the draft and getting so many contributors in each of Joe Ortiz's first 2 draft classes. And I think that's the exciting part of 2026 is, hey, what if we take that roster from last year, you get a little healthier, and you give one more Joe Ortiz kind of, juice to this team? That is something that you can get really excited about.
Yeah, because that's one thing that, regardless of what your opinion is Joe Ortiz has crushed the draft the last couple of years. And it's not just been top-end talent. It's been guys that's been able to provide depth, and just it lengthens the roster with the type of players that they've been able to find in the early rounds, middle rounds, and later rounds, finding contributors up and down the draft. That's the measure of a good football team, is having waves of talent that you can bring in if somebody gets hurt or they need to take a couple plays off. Those waves of talent come primarily from the draft. Those guys that you can have on cost-controlled contracts. And the first couple of years, if they're any indication, then yes, you should be very excited about what another Joe Ortiz draft could possibly be. And I think for me, on the defensive side, I think it's really about ensuring your pass rush and securing it and getting it completely signed, sealed, and delivered. And I know you don't want to overload position groups with a whole lot of money, but this is a position group that's going to take a whole lot of money, because these players are extremely important to you winning football games. So I want them to bring back Odafe Oweh. I think he earned it. I think he's in the middle of his prime right now. Tuli Tuipulotu, I think a contract needs to be done there, whether it's now or next year. I think sooner rather than later, because if he has another year like he had this year, it's going to get really, really expensive. And I'm all in favor of bringing Khalil Mack back, because regardless of the dip in his sack numbers, his ability to set the edge and be violent on the edge and be able to provide just really game-changing plays from that position is still there. And I still love the leadership that he brings. So really making sure that you can help out your new defensive coordinator with getting him as many guys that can get after the quarterback as possible, I think is a recipe for success.
Yeah, you have to have a pass rush, and it did feel like with the trio of guys they had, they really did unlock something that basically stayed consistent after the Jacksonville Jaguars game throughout the rest of the season, and that is huge, And I think the other thing is, too, is if you don't get those guys back now, getting an edge rusher jumps to what you feel like you have to almost take in the first round at that point, or you're going to sign, another free agent that you feel like can give you close to what either of those guys did. But the Chargers are going to need contributions from the young guys too. They're going to have to nail it free agency, obviously, but 5 rookies for them played over 300 snaps last year. 3 of them played over 400. 11 players from the last 2 classes have played over 300 snaps. That's just the up and down contributions you just weren't seeing in previous regimes. And Chargers only have 5 picks in the 2026 draft. They need to find at least 4 more players that can contribute again this year. So whether that's trading back and getting more chances at it, but you also kind of need some other guys to take the next step too. The Keandre Lambert-Smiths of the world, Kyle Kennard. Can you get something out of Junior Colson? That's the other part. But offensively, at least, outside of the line, you don't need much. So you feel like it should be a defensive focused draft. Wide receiver, running back, tight end. You have young guys, talented guys at each of those positions. And I think the last thing is, we're talking about the Chargers making a Super Bowl. The biggest thing is obviously Justin Herbert's going to have to show up in the playoffs. That is what it's going to be. They're not going to ever make it to the Super Bowl if he can't play well in the playoffs, period. He's not going to have, it's too much to ask for this team to carry him, and they shouldn't have to. They're paying him the money for him to be the reason they're winning, not just to help them get there. He has to be the reason. But more than that, though, luckily he has somebody that you feel like can help him in that regard. But he does have 3 nightmare playoff losses that are going to be, thought about every time he gets there now. And I think if you can win one, the pressure comes off a little bit, right? In the last 3 playoff games he's had with Greg Roman and Joe Lombardi, you're hoping he doesn't have to be Superman and carry the team, but he has to be good. And he hasn't been when they've needed him to be. So you get those things done, you're going to have a chance to make the Super Bowl in 2026, period. And the other thing is free agency. The numbers keep going up, up, up. And I think the Chargers need to be more aggressive in securing a couple starters for the next few seasons and spending the money necessary to do it in this upcoming class. So we're talking about that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text one shared business number so nothing ever gets missed, and it works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. With Quo's smart AI tools, you can automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple, and that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle, and it puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. Pulled up the Game Time app, picked an upcoming NBA game, and I know as being a Chargers podcast, there's probably a bunch of Laker fans out there, and I was shocked to see when I pulled up the Lakers' next home game against the 76ers, you can get in for less than $100. I saw tickets as low as $90, which is lower than the last time I checked it, and that is the great thing about Game Time. The closer you get to tip-off, a lot of times the price keeps going down, plus you can see the exact view you're going to have from your seats, and they also have zone deals where you choose the section and Game Time picks the seats and you save even more. Everything's quick, intuitive, stress-free from start to finish, so take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. David, well, there was some NFL news over the weekend because the salary cap has a much better projection now than we maybe thought. And the Chargers, obviously, is one of the teams with the most salary cap space, can only sit and rejoice a little bit more because the NFL has put out basically to the teams what the projected salary cap is going to be, which puts everything into perspective for the GMs around the league and for Joe Ortiz specifically to know exactly how much money he has to play with to start kind of building the framework for some of these offers that he's about to make. So the cap keeps going up, David. More money to spend for the Chargers.
Yes, indeed. Tom Pelissero put out a tweet documenting exactly what that increase would be, and it is the NFL informed clubs today that is projecting a 2026 salary cap in the range of $301.2 to $305.7 million per club per source. That would represent another significant jump from this year's $279.2 million cap number. That is a massive number, a big jump, and it basically gives the Chargers, if at the highest end, basically an extra $10 million. So per over the cap, the Chargers could have as much as $90.7 million of cap space. And that's not factoring in the Tier Tart contract. We haven't have those numbers yet, or what that first year cap hit is going to be. But still, that is a lot of money for the Chargers to be able to make some significant things happen.
And as far as like the money going up, like it is, obviously good when you have more money to spend. But the thing is also is everyone has more money to spend, right? It probably actually means a little bit more for the teams who are like went from being projected to be over the cap and now are at least a little bit under. But I do think that the big thing for the Chargers is that they have also some prime candidates to clear up more space if they want to, including Mekhi Becton and Bradley Bozeman, Will Dissly. Just those three guys gets you to $19.5 million, right? J.K. Scott's another guy who could become a cap casualty. They could say $3 million, 2.8 to be exact on him if they wanted to get rid of him. So the Chargers have flexibility. Now, every player that you had that, was playing and making your 53-man roster that you let go of is somebody that you have to replace with someone who's going to make the NFL minimum salary at the very least. So just because releasing guys just opens up more holes that you have to fill, but they do have the flexibility to basically do and target whoever they want in this free agency class. And I think it's big because I do think the Chargers have to be a bit more aggressive. Like the biggest deal they've given out in the 2 years of Joe Ortiz was Mekhi Becton, 2 years, $19.5 million, at least to external free agents, obviously. And that one didn't work. But the thing is that's because you kind of went like middle to top of the market when you tried to target it, right? Like you didn't go for one of the guys that was at the top of the market. You went for someone that's kind of in the middle because of the red flags that he brought along. And I think it's just the bigger part of this is like being better with your offensive picks. Like these are the offensive guys they've gotten so far. Hayden Hurst, Bradley Bozeman, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, DJ Chark, Tyler Conklin, Will Dissly, Mekhi Becton, Mike Williams, remember that? Keenan Allen, Najee Harris, and Andre James. Like, that's just not a huge hit rate. Like, Keenan Allen for sure, right? Yeah. Keenan Allen, J.K. Dobbins, that's 2. And it's going to be a big part of it, too. Mike McDaniel's kind of, helping Joe Ortiz to bring in the players that he needs for this offense. But I do think they need to not be afraid, David, to go give out a larger contract to potentially secure like a 2 to 3 year starter that can kind of stabilize things at a position of need.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. The first year they were trying to get out of cap hell because they had to make some moves to be able to do that. I completely understand it. Last year, they had a ton of money, and they really didn't really spend it on anybody outside of the building. There was a lot of one-year deals, a lot of short-term contracts, and this year, like, okay, you tried the prudent approach, and some of those low cost, low risk contracts did hit. But now it's time to shop at the top of the market and go get some real impact players. And don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money. I mean, hey, you got to spend money to make money. And what I mean in this situation is you got to go, go get some good, like high quality players so that you can put yourself and push yourself over the top, because the Chargers haven't really done that. And yeah, I understand. Obviously, there's inherent risk involved in tossing out contracts of that magnitude and that value. But also, if you get 2 or 3 years of quality play out of a player that's in their prime, like a couple of these guys that are about to hit the market are going to be, then you're going to get return on your investment. Yeah. I think in every contract that we've seen, the Chargers do a pretty good job of trying to install some sort of ripcord in the contract at a later date to try to protect them against players that are going to age out. But right now, you got to strike while the iron's hot. And I think the Chargers are in that window, and they need to spend that money like it's burning a hole in their pocket, at least, and make sure you do it, intelligently.
Yeah, like that's the thing is like you still have to pick the right players, right? And that is hard. It's hard to figure out. But like you look at teams like the Seahawks and the Patriots, like both have hit on impact players this year in free agency.
And
they were 2
big.
of the top 4 spending teams in the NFL last year. So like, and it's not, the winners of free agency don't often make it to the Super Bowl. So the Patriots are a little bit of an outlier. But like last year, there were good offensive linemen available. I mean, per PFF, these were the best signings for each of their team last year. Drew Dahlman, and a guy we talked about last year, Ben Bredesen, Kevin Zeitler, a guy we talked about a lot, Greg Van Roten. Like there were offensive linemen that were available, and a lot of those guys didn't make top dollar that came in and ended up being really good players for their team. So like, yeah, I get it. If last year you didn't think it was the year to kind of cash in and there weren't the guys there you felt worthy of it, you have to find those guys this year, because you're not just going to be able to go into the draft and fix every issue on your interior offensive line. You're going to have to secure a lot of that in free agency, in my opinion. So yeah, that is what it's going to have to take, and they need to be a little bit more aggressive than waiting, 2.5 weeks into free agency and getting Mekhi Becton like we saw last year. But I think the good news is, David, is the Chargers as a destination do have a good free agent pitch to sell these guys.
Oh, they absolutely do. I mean, you have a football team that was in the playoffs 2 years in a row. So they are a contender. You want to contend, you want to go try to win a championship. This is a team that's very, very close to doing that. And I think you would have to be naive to not be able to see that. Also, you get to play in Los Angeles. You get to play half of your games in fantastic, beautiful weather. You also have an established head coach that has won a lot of football games at every single level, that has that immediate buy-in. And you also have a state-of-the-art, brand new facility that your players can go there and get better and feel like they're going to get fully taken care of, which that's not the case when you look around the NFL. Then not everybody has the type of facilities that the Chargers have. So a beautiful stadium, beautiful facilities, and a great place to be able to call home for however long you want to do it. Oh, and by the way, if you have any aspirations of doing anything post-football, what better place would there be to do it in the media capital of the world, Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely more networking opportunities and, entrepreneurial type of things going on. Ask Austin Eckler, right, who granted every bit of that he could while he was here. But yeah, I'd say the other thing, too, is obviously a lot of times money talks, and that's something brought up to me. You also have the money, right, to be competitive with your offers. The one bugaboo here, like the one thing that kills you is the California taxes. Like you can go to Florida and not get what you're going to be taxed in California, and that does, play a role in some of these. But I think the biggest thing is like the Chargers in these last couple of years, time and time again, have shown that they can help players resurrect their career and go on to get bigger paychecks somewhere else, maybe in tax-friendlier states. But that is something that most teams can't say, hey, come here, we're going to get you a bigger bag on your next deal. Just come here, rehabilitate your image, rehabilitate the product you're putting out in the field and on tape, and you're going to make your money. But this is the place you want to come to show that's the kind of money that you deserve. So you have that going for you as well, which I think is a huge selling point to some of these free agents. And it is a team, at least, that is showing, hey, we're going to be in the playoffs every year. Come be a part of something. Come be a part of maybe a first, right? Come try to win this team a championship. And I think that is, there's a lot of good selling points they have there. But their hubris can't get in the way, right? Like it did last season, whereas, we won 11 games, right, Pop? Pretty good. It can't be that this year. It has to be urgency. There has to be aggressiveness. Let's go win right now. That has to be the motto. Of course, you're trying to win every year. Show me with your actions. Don't tell me you want to win a Super Bowl. Show me that you want to put a Super Bowl.
Yeah, not all years are created equal. It's very clear that this Chargers team is right on the doorstep, and if you make the right moves, then they can get to that promised land.
Yep, and it's just, Derwin James isn't getting any younger. Justin Herbert's not getting any younger or having any less hits on him, right? Like, it just, you got to go. And it's year 3 now in Jim Harbaugh. We need to see some progress, and it starts with having a roster that's capable of doing it. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Tomorrow is Buy or Sell Tuesday, which means that we're going to be getting into, no, we're not. Some news is going to come out. We are expecting a Chris O'Leary press conference at some point this week, I would have to think, with Mike McDaniel going last week. So that will probably happen. So probably that'll happen today after you guys hear this, considering tomorrow we're planning on doing a buy or sell show, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions as we always do. And if you want to get on the show, hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, or you can call on the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and get your voice on the show as well. The best way to never miss the show, though, is subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from. And if you want an ad-free version of the audio podcast, you can do that now as well in the Locked On Everydayer Club, where we'll still be here 5 days a week on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. But if you want an ad-free version wherever you get your podcast from, you can do that in the Locked On Everydayer Club. You can find the link in the show notes. It's $5 a month and be part of our exclusive Locked On Chargers Discord channel that we're trying to grow this offseason. So if you want a little extra, you can do that, but make sure you're back here tomorrow for Buy or Sell Tuesday. Until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.